Okay, I will call our September Parks Committee meeting to order. The only people missing are Tim and Susan, so I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Public comment. Anybody here interested in sharing a public comment? If so, you can go up to the podium. I will note that as the chair, after the presentation regarding the splash pad and we've had our comments, we will open the floor to you as the citizens for any questions that you might have. So with that, assuming we have no public comments, we will go right into Centennial Park Playscape planning.
So I'll hop in here, Sam, just for a quick minute. With us tonight, Blake and Katie from Parkitecture and Planning, the firm in the Madison area that are planning parks in every corner of the world. They have spent some time with the village board of late talking about this idea of splash pad, inclusive playground. The village board recently approved a contract with Parkitecture to move forward on this idea of planning for a new facility in Centennial Park. We do have with us tonight some of the Centennial Park neighbors. Just for the committee's knowledge, we did send a personal notice to every house that surrounds the Centennial Park neighborhood. So we reached out specifically to those neighbors. We also did some posting on social media late yesterday afternoon. So that is kind of late to the game, but hopefully we gather some more community comments as we move forward. We also are being recorded tonight and the meeting is being posted on Zoom. So there might be some people that'll be logging in from home as well. Everybody that's in the audience, please make sure that you signed in on our sign up sheet. I also encourage everybody to leave us an email address. This will be the last meeting that we will actually send paper letters to interested participants. So if I have an email address, I will be sure to continue to communicate with you all that way. And then the last thing I want to say before we cut Blake loose here is there is a survey online where we are asking people to share their thoughts and information with us. And I would encourage everybody to take the time to do that as well. All of the comments that we gather, we'll share with Blake and Katie, and we'll use that information as we move forward through this process. So we are excited to be here today with you, and we'll give you the floor, Blake.
Great. Thank you, Sue. So yeah, thank you for having us for the project. We're excited. This is the sort of the kickoff here. We have not done any design yet other than the loose bubble diagrams that was presented to the board. So tonight is the first sort of dive in, if you will, and we have lots of show and tell to get through. And a lot of it relates to, if you can pull up the slides, Sue, a lot of it relates to the content that was shared with the village board a few weeks ago. So what I wanted to do is start there and just run through kind of that content again. For those of you who weren't at that meeting, whether you're in the audience or on the park board, and get you kind of up to speed as to where we're at, and then further explain some of the ideas and the content that we were looking at. So we'll see if my remote's going to work tonight. All right, Sue, I may have to ask you to advance it for me. All right. So Centennial Park is the location that we're moving forward with, and the general space that we have identified. Is that me or you? Oh, perfect. So rack on. Great. So the project area, as it were, is shown here. Essentially, we have two nodes of activity. One is going to be the splash pad, and one is going to be the inclusive playground. And in this diagram, we showed the playground getting relocated from what was number 4 in the existing footprint to the space north of the shelter, and then the splash pad occupying that existing footprint. And again, this was a patterning exercise to see, you know, is it going to fit? How are the connections made? So the end result is going to be a little bit different. We'll end up blending the spaces. We'd really like them to have a relationship together. And we did spend some time on the site today as a group, kind of evaluating, you know, how do the grades factor into this? And I'll talk about that here in a second. You know, and is that really the right configuration of the play versus splash, or do we want to, you know, think about tweaking that a little bit? The other element that the project is going to include is a small hardscape addition on the south end of the shelter for some shade and some lighting. You know, this is the skating rink, and we want to try and activate this space during all 12 months, all 4 seasons. And so, you know, can this space be a little bit of support for some of those, you know, outside of summer use activities? We're also looking at potential reconfiguration of the pathway systems through here. One of the big goals is to make sure that everything we do is going to be fully ADA accessible. Currently, there's a lot of things that don't work well in the park space, and so we want to address that. So whether the path gets realigned this way or if it comes up this way, you know, we need to figure that out once we get a topographic survey done, and we can actually evaluate how all that ties in. So we know where our utilities are, so water and storm sewer and electric. So we've sort of figured all that out. We know it's all going to work. All the core infrastructure is in place, which is great. Not all parks have that kind of built into it when we inherit it as a project. So as I mentioned, it's a combined play space, which is very unique for Wanakee. Of course, you don't have any aquatic facilities, so this will be the first of its kind. And we were just talking before the meeting started about some other examples in the area that have a similar setup. Middleton at Lakeview Park does have a playground and a splash pad directly adjacent to each other with, you know, shaded seating. Wetmore Park in Sun Prairie is a very, very close comparable to what we're proposing here, and that was just done 2 years ago. So it's you know, very a great example if you want to get out for a road trip and you know, take a 12-minute drive over to your neighbors to the east. I talked about the 4 season, the core infrastructure. The other great thing about this site is it is very central and accessible via multiple modes of access. So for us as a firm, for Parkitecture, splash pads are really exciting. It's a way for us to tell a story for a community. You know, I talked a little bit about these 2 examples. I grew up on the East Coast in a beach town, and my favorite thing was to fly a kite, and my least favorite thing was to find an octopus stuck to my leg when I was out in the water. And so I decided to combine my favorite and my least favorite experience in a splash pad in another community and gave them both. So, you know, it's a little bit of a way to create, you know, a fun environment and stimulate kids' imagination in a playscape. There's lots of ways to do it. This is as you can probably guess, the Baraboo splash pad that is about to start construction, heavy theming on the circus heritage of the community. And so what we need to do tonight, I'm hoping, is to try and hone in on what the direction, what the story is we're going to tell for Centennial and for Wanakee. We had some discussion after the meeting in the parking lot last week on one potential direction. And so we can debate that and explore some others tonight here. But, you know, for us to really start putting pen to paper, that is a critical element to figure out, are we doing a circus? Are we doing a beach? You know, or whatever that is, we need to figure it out pretty soon so we can start to have some fun and come back to you with some imagery that tells that story. So different ways to design and construct splash pads. There's all different scales. You know, we can do things that are big, right? With these big dump buckets, lots of water. We can do things that are smaller, a lot of ground sprays, you know, combinations of those elements. These all show very bright colors. That doesn't mean every splash pad has to be bright, vibrant, and whimsical. We've done lots of different varieties, so we'll again talk through merits of that tonight. The other thing that we like to do in our splash pads is try and make it more than just a 3-month experience. There's ways to select features that become landscape or art in the landscape. We can integrate ground plane lighting. So again, it becomes an activated space when it's not just flowing water. You know, it's an investment in your community, so we want to make sure that we're using those funds appropriately and getting the most out of it. So again, another way to add lighting into the space. You know, I could see some of this in the winter with the skating element and the warming shelter. You know, maybe there's a little bit of playful light in that small plaza we're adding. All right, so I'm going to shift to the inclusive playground and talk through some of what we are going to try and accomplish through this project. When we talk about the term inclusive, it means everyone playing together. It's not a playground designed for individuals with disabilities. It is a playground designed for everyone to play together, no matter what your ability or your adventure level is. So when we start to look at playground equipment, you're going to see varying levels of danger. I'll use the term danger in quotes. You know, the perception of danger to a child is very, very important. That's the way they grow, by pushing themselves and their limits. It's also very important to select features that we can have everyone mix and mingle together as they play. And so we're going to, show you lots of examples of ways to do that, whether it's a rocker that includes a bench seat and a wheelchair seat. You know, again, we're trying to find ways for everyone to play together. So another big thing with inclusive play, I talked about the sense of danger, is trying to make sure that everyone, no matter what your ability level, has access to all the different levels of a playground. And there are ways to do that with ramping. A child in a wheelchair is not obviously going to be able to climb a climbing apparatus that someone else may. So we have to find different routes and different ways to get everyone to that same level of play. The other big thing in inclusive playscapes is inclusion of barriers, so fencing. There are a lot of children on the spectrum who are runners, and so we have to be aware of those needs. And so we need to think through, what makes the most sense for how to provide those barriers without creating a sense of enclosure in that playscape. So that's a very important piece that we're going to work through. What are the materials? What's the alignment? How does that work? So I'm about to get into some show and tell here. So one of the other big things that we're going to try and do is use color appropriately. And in a playground, the ground plane is a great canvas for the use of color. And it does several things. It helps delineate pathways. So if you look to see these orange pathways kind of meandering through the equipment, it also helps define use zones and danger zones. So you see at the bottom of this slide, there's a red circle that helps people understand that there's activity, there's motion here that they need to be aware of as they move through the space. The other thing we really like to do, I said, color can delineate pathways. It also can essentially at no cost give you a play element in that ground plane. Has anyone played hot lava or had a kid or a grandkid who's played hot lava? Yeah, just by putting colored shapes in that ground plane, you've now added a two-dimensional play element that extends your 3D play value as well. So one of the ideas that we've talked about since day one, Centennial has some really great topography built in, and we don't always get that in a site. And so we'd like to take advantage of that and look to build, hill slides and climbing apparatuses into those berms and banks. It's a great way for people or kids and adults to play together. It's not only play, it's also physical fitness, and you're sort of tricking the user into getting exercise and stretching their muscles at the same time. I'm going to pause there and talk a little bit about surfacing. Yes, I am. So a couple different ways to skin the ground plane of an inclusive playground. Poured in place rubber. Has anyone been on a poured in place? Okay, it's going to look something like this, like a rubber sandwich, right? Or a Rice Krispie treat. Lots of different colors. So this image here is the poured in place, so the green and blue. It's a terrific surface because it's resilient. Right? The bottom layer is what takes your impact attenuation and gives you that safety factor. And then the top skin, which you can see is pretty thin, is what gives you the decoration or the adornment. So that is one option. Second option is artificial turf. So again, it's much like the rubber sandwich. We have a turf sandwich, but instead of rubber, we have crushed foam that is bound together that gives you that impact attenuation, and then it's topped with a layer of turf. Both are extremely resilient. They exceed all of the impact tests, and it allows you to do some creative things. Bottom left image shows you a hybrid of poured in place and turf surfacing. It's a great way to go. Again, it helps define use areas. It helps define paths of travel. A great solution in an environment like this. We're also not bound to green grass. So you can get artificial turf in all sorts of colors, which again expands our design palette as we move through. The red is a bit much perhaps, but lots of different options. So we're doing a similar project in another community mid-state, and we had a child with autism on the steering committee attend our last meeting, and we were talking about turf and how it integrates in the design. And we were passing these samples around, and he said, well, I'm not sure that's going to work, because as he ran his hand one way on the turf, it felt smooth and calming to him. But when he ran his hand the other way, it felt like sandpaper. And he said for him specifically, that sensory was a deal breaker. And so that was great input for us. I hadn't really considered that element. And so we started doing a little bit deeper dive on, we have boxes and boxes of stuff like this in our office, by the way, which is fun. And so we started looking into other types of turf, different blade lengths, different weaves. It's a lot like carpet, right? So you can get shag if you're still doing that, and you can get Berber, and so anyway, long story short, we were able to find another grass sample that has a sensory friendly blade. And so we're at our next meeting, we're going to take this to him and see how he reacts to that. So that was kind of an exciting discovery. And so every time we do a project, we learn some new things and we share it with you guys. So I do want to pass these around so you guys can kind of touch them and feel them and see what they're all about. So I will start up here. I think I'm going to rewind a minute. Okay, so the image on the right, I want to sort of do a quick comparison 101 of inclusive play and sort of traditional what we call post and deck playground, which is predominantly what you have in your system and most communities have in their parks. So where you would have a series of vertical posts painted some color, and then you have decks, right? Your flat surface areas. And those are all linked together by steps like this, or you have slide exits, or you have fireman's poles, or whatever the entry and exit system is. In this scenario, you can start to see everything is ramped, right? So all of those decks are connected with ramps that meet ADA slopes, so 1 to 12, a 1 foot rise in 12 horizontal feet. While all these bright colors are great, we're not limited to just painting posts. And I brought this for you guys. We talked about the potential of a natural theme playscape at the last meeting. So this is actually a playground post from one of our projects we did a number of years ago in a nature center. And it's the same interior material, the steel post, but it's coated to look like a tree trunk. So there are things that we can do. My point here is we're not tied to traditional equipment and geometry. So I want you guys to think as a group a little bit bigger. Because this is an opportunity to, again, tell that story.
This be appropriate for the splash park too? Or would water in this not flat surface not really go well together?
Yeah, great question. We have never actually done that on a splash pad, and I would be inclined to lean away from it because, there are minerals in the water, and with that much surface area, it may stain, and I would be harder to clean, I think. It's an interesting question.
You can paint something that is smooth into a pattern like a tree.
Yes, that's a great comment. So, for example, in Fitchburg, that's a heavy agrarian theme, and so we had a lot of our features that were painted to look like milk cans or corn stalks, and so you can get a visual without that texture. Yeah, great comment.
Blake, I'm going to jump in here. Just to committee members, if you have a question, please feel free, but you have to push your button on your microphone so the people that are joining us online can hear.
All right, I'm going to get back on my track here. So we talked about surfacing. What I didn't talk about in the splash pad was surfacing. And one of the things that Katie and I get really excited about is the ground plane in a splash pad. We love colored and decorative concrete. And for those of you who love gray concrete, that's boring. So this is your world of opportunity in concrete. And actually we can do more, but these are the colors that we can routinely get. And if you've been to any of our projects, you have probably seen at least 4 of these colors in some sort of combination. So again, it's a really easy way, an inexpensive way to continue that story that we're telling above ground in the concrete plane. And it has all the same structural integrity, longevity, it's all the same. It just is more fun. You want me to pass these? Yeah, mine's. Let's see what else I have in the bag of tricks. So the pour in place rubber, again, we have tons of options, right? It's pretty much the rainbow, not quite Crayola, but it is definitely the rainbow on steroids of options. And we can actually do hybrids as well. So if you wanted to get crazy and mix a pink and blue fleck, you can do things like that and get your own custom color. So as we move into design and we really lock down this theme, we'll start to figure out, okay, what does all of our ground plane work or look like and work together between the splash pad and the playground itself. Okay, so I had mentioned in the playground slides, we have ground sprays and we have vertical sprays. So with me tonight, I brought examples of both. So a normal ground spray is going to have a small base that's, put into the concrete, and it has a perforated cap. And those perforations we can specify in all different combinations. So this one is a 6, and they're all spraying out. So it looks like a fountain coming out, but you can get them in a laminar effect. So it's like a water wall. So as we go through, we're not only looking at the vertical features, we're also very intent on picking the right combination of those ground sprays. Because as a child, you're not only focused on that water coming down, you're very much focused on the water coming at you from below. So it is a very methodical design process that we go through as we select all those features. The vertical features themselves bolt onto a much bigger base here on the table. So it's a 4-bolt pattern typically, and when you need to take them off, if you want to take them off for winterization, there's a spray cap, or I'm sorry, a solid cap that would go on top that doesn't allow any of our water to get in the pipes. One of the things that's critical in a splash pad or any aquatic environment is making sure we don't get water in our pipe system below grade. We are in Wisconsin, it does get cold here, and our systems are all designed to accommodate that. All the piping from our features back drains into our manifold pit. And so it's very easy to actually to winterize. all the water will back drain into that pit, and then you hook up a compressor to the manifold and you blow out the lines, and in about 4 hours, it's ready to be put to bed. So we try to design systems that are easy on community staff. We've done a lot of these. We've learned a lot of lessons over the years. And so again, we try and share those with you and make your job as easy as it can be. How am I doing? Questions on anything? Or are you guys up to speed here? Okay, so one of the other fun things in the storytelling realm is the shade. And several things that people always talk about as the most important elements in a splash pad. And whether you hear it from us or someone else, shade, seating, and parking, right? Those are 3 elements we always look at when we're evaluating site potential. Fabric shade is a great way to go. It's very cost effective and quite frankly, very effective in the shade cast that it provides. More artistic, rigid structures are also a great way to kind of break the plane and be a little whimsical and creative in your space. And then, of course, there's the uber creative. If you do get a chance to go to Sun Prairie, you'll see our 24-foot butterfly shade structures that loom over the whole playground and make quite a statement. So integrating color and the verticality, and again, a little bit of the whimsical element in the landscape is great, because it's all about stimulating the kids' imagination in these spaces. Okay, so lighting I touched on earlier, whether it's in the ground plane, in the splash pad, or we had that little plaza space shown on the south end of the shelter. You know, I imagine it doing something like this, maybe not the bright cafe tables, but something low impact and would only be utilized in special event scenarios in that space could really liven it up on the south end. And that works really well for post softball game hangout. It works well for tying in with the winter recreation element. So, and who knows, it could work well with WanaFest as well. Oh, there's our butterflies there in the upper right. So that's the Sun Prairie project. One of the things that we love to do, and I think there's a really great opportunity at Centennial, is to integrate landscape into the playscape. And we have those existing pines on the berm that we want to really try and save and actually, make them feel like they're a part of the playscape. We don't necessarily have to create these artificial berms that are shown here, because we have some that already exist that we can try and build into. And as we were out on site today, we were looking at the potential of potentially, having an elevated structure and then a ramp or a bridge, if you will, from that elevated tower over to the upper surface area by the shelter. And so that way you have a fully ADA accessible route from the upper elevation onto a high tower right away. Really exciting opportunities. So, it's kind of similar to what we see here, except imagine a tower sitting here and a bridge across. Could be a really fun element to integrate. But anytime we can add these little planting pockets, in the playscape is a great way to add seating, add natural shade, and create some interest for kids and adults, quite frankly. So. And actually, we were looking, there's one tree right kind of in the middle of that existing playground that we may try and integrate somehow into that environment. So do you want me to go through schedule? Yeah, I guess I can. So we're starting design here. We are September 23rd, 23. We're still on track. If all goes well through our design process, we'll be ready to put the project out for bid in January, which then sets you up for a summer construction. There are elements that we may want to look at pre-ordering. We know that electrical components have a long lead time. Some playground manufacturers have a very long lead time. So as we get further in the design process, we'll probably make a short list of some of those things that make sense to try and get in the hopper pre-bid status. We talked about maintenance at the village board. I kind of ran through our hours and, what our estimates of water consumption were going to be and man-hour consumption. And so I can go through all that if you would like me to, but essentially it is minimal. When we open, again, we have a few hours on the fall end and then some hours on the spring side to get the water turned on, balance all of our features, make sure that we're not spraying water off into the grass. That has to be done essentially once a year. If any of the valves got bumped, but it's a very minimal time. And I hate to say set it and forget it, but splash pads are kind of a set it, forget it. At least the flow through splash pads are. Once you have everything dialed in, it's pretty much good to go for the season. So we're asked about typical lifespan of both playgrounds and splash pads. And generally, you're seeing 25 to 30 years in playgrounds. A lot of communities are stretching that a lot farther. And the problem with that strategy is the codes change in terms of safety. And so we have to make sure that we're keeping things up to speed and keeping our kids safe. Splash pads are essentially pipes and concrete. So splash pad pipes are either made of Schedule 80, which is a very thick walled pipe, or PEX. Does anyone know what PEX is? It's a flexible pipe that is now used in all home construction for water distribution. So it's actually a nice alternative to Schedule 80, which is an extremely rigid pipe. In our environments, we know that our ground freezes. And so any flexibility we can build into our systems helps that longevity of the project. So we've actually been transitioning from Schedule 80 to PEX on a lot of our projects just for that added safety factor of long-term maintenance. I think I'm about done here. So we ran some initial estimates on potential construction costs. And here's where we ended up, somewhere in the range of 1.7 to 2 with all of the elements that we've been talking about as a group. And as we continue through the project, we'll continually benchmark and gut check all of those costs. These are big budget ranges. Once we get into actual design, we'll start to break it out line by line. So how many tons of stone, how many square feet of 4-inch concrete versus square feet of 6-inch concrete versus square feet of 6-inch green concrete. So, and all of those have different unit costs. And so when we come back at you with different iterations and levels of plan, we'll have updated cost estimates and make sure that we're still falling somewhere in this window. The last thing any of us want to do is get to bid day and see a bid of 2.1 million. So we talked a little bit about how the funding gets, how it's found, where it comes from. And we have identified 1 to 3 to 1 4 that's currently available. So we know that there is a gap that has to be overcome, and Sue is working on strategies to fill that void here. But certainly that's a topic for discussion with you guys tonight. If you have ideas of where it could come from, if it's a donor program, or if we have to look at some of the other strategies that were identified by village staff. So that's the recap of all the content that was shared with village board and the public last month, and with a little bit deeper dive as we went. So I guess I'll pause for a minute and maybe Katie ask if I missed anything that I should have covered.
I think that was a lot of content to absorb, so.
Then I'll ask you guys if you have any questions on that content first. Then I can talk about next steps.
I guess I will start because I've got a number of them. Both during your presentation to the village board meeting and again tonight, you talked about retaining the pine trees. There are a lot of trees in that park. And you've both times been specific about saving the pines. Are we going to be losing other trees to the playground area? Or when you say saving the trees, are we going to retain all the trees in that park?
Yeah, so our hope is to retain all of them. The one caveat I might say is that that smaller one, it's about a 4-inch linden in the middle of the existing playground. That one we're evaluating, could it be spaded out and transplanted, or can we actually build around it? But my intent is to save every mature tree that's out there.
Do you envision the splash park part of this creation to be within that berm?
So that was our initial,
Seems kind of small. It seemed to me, it just seems like a small area.
well, so there are several tiers of playground in that bermed area.
Okay.
And I think when we're done shaping it and looking at grades, that all becomes one elevation. And I'm not sure where that elevation is in relation to the shelter or the part of the parking lot. The berms all stay as a hug, right? As
Okay.
a surround, but everything within that levels. Because right now there's 3 distinct tiers within that bermed area. So one of the things that we were looking at today was, does it make sense to maybe look at shifting where the playground was shown versus the splash pad? You know, there are pros and cons, I think, to having the playground stay where it was. And Sue, I actually may go back. Or are you doing that already?
trying
Mhm.
to-
We've been hearing some comments from the survey and from some other residents that, you know, maybe it makes some sense to leave the playground in its current location due to proximity to the ball diamonds. And, you know, the playground is used 12 months of the year, whereas the splash pad has a much smaller window of activity. And so maybe it makes sense to have that on, you know, have the splash pad tucked in here, and then we expand all of this out, and that all becomes the play. So I think that's a topic that we really need to discover tonight from you guys and sort of make that decision so we can plow forward.
That ties into something I was going to talk about, which is Area 10, which you were talking about as having kind of a social purpose area.
Yeah, that's a great term.
And this also ties into, I guess, my questions about shade. With that pavilion there, I'm not sure. I question how much shade we necessarily need, but we can talk about that as time goes on. But I was there with my kids when I lived in that neighborhood years ago, and a lot of the families that are playing baseball would have their children playing on that playground equipment. So if we do leave the splash park where you have it, put playground equipment on the other side of the pavilion, I think it might be nice to retain something for small little kids. I would rather see 10 be a couple of swings as opposed to necessarily something for grownups.
Sure.
Just an idea.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. And I think, you know, getting back to the core of that question, we really need to figure out, what does this relationship look like? As I started off by saying, I don't think we're going to have this much of separation between the two. We'd really like to kind of blur the lines and create more of an integrated space. There is quite a bit of grade change through here. So I think one of the first things that we're going to need to do when we get the survey is just take some big footprints and say, okay, how are we making this work? How are we balancing our pathways, achieving ADA compliance, and still getting, you know, the square footage we want out of both spaces?
Thank you.
Yeah, those are good questions.
I guess I would say that there are some benefits to perhaps swapping the locations. One of the suggestions that was raised to me by someone was that, you know, there's a door to the restrooms in the back of the shelter. And,
Yeah, right
you know,
here.
that shelter gets quite a bit of use. And then, you know, folks with, you know, wetsuits or whatever, then they don't have to trudge through where, you know, other people are walking or doing something. They can just hop in the back, change their suit, you know, whatever they need to do. In terms of theme, the 3 things that I heard from people in terms of unsolicited feedback out on the street was either a natural or sort of an agricultural type theme. And several people expressed, including Wanakee purple as an element, whether in the playground or something.
I'm not sure I can get purple grass, but I could look into it. But
Yeah, or even,
yeah.
you know, a piece of play equipment or
Yeah,
whatever,
sure.
you know.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I think your point about the restrooms is good. And actually, one of the things I was going to mention is our plan as a part of this project is to look at epoxy coating on the concrete floor inside the shelter and the restrooms. Because of that very fact, we're going to have wet, bare feet. And we want to make sure that we are trying to avoid any slip potential. So that is something that we've discussed, and maybe that's a way to bring in the Wanakee purple in that fleck, who knows? Yeah, good comments. And actually, the other comment, I'm just going to build on your statements here, the changing element. I think that it's great that we have restrooms in these two lobes of the pie, but we may also want to explore some external changing stalls, whether it's tucked in on the side of the building or whether we look at a freestanding structure like we have at the Sun Prairie example. I think there is merit because the turnover in a changing stall is different than the turnover in a restroom stall. So.
The only question I had, had asked at the village board meeting and wasn't sure if there'd been more conversation around potential acceleration of the schedule to move the construction up, to have components of it done before Oktoberfest. Or if that's just not, and if it's not, that's fine too. I just didn't know if there had been further conversations about the schedule.
So we have not looked at accelerating the schedule yet. We really hadn't been turned loose on design yet until a few days ago. So we're going to move as fast as we can to accelerate the construction schedule. Really can't start too much earlier just because of snow and frozen ground. But I do think there's opportunity to get ahead of that and pre-order some of the things that we know are going to have some long lead times. And that way we're sort of playing the clock a little bit. We did talk about shutting down the site during WannaFest, to make sure that we respect that event and give the park, a chance to breathe during that event, and we're not having conflicting space. The nice thing is we're not inhibiting the access routes for WannaFest or for emergency services. So that's all going to remain intact. And I think, this is a small enough footprint that we can sort of isolate it and still let the rest of the park do what it wants to do.
Let me follow up with the question about timing. I'm assuming we're going to leave all summer through October as a construction time to give possible bidders some flexibility about when they're going to come in here. Is it going to take May till October to do the actual construction of this, or are we leaving that window to give the bidders some flexibility?
It's probably going to take every day of that window.
Okay.
Maybe not every day, but yeah, it'll take a chunk.
Not WannaFest.
Yeah.
I understand the schedule and leaving lead time, and that's all fine. Hate to open up or finish a splash park in October and then leave everything sitting there for one winter. Can we not maybe put some things up there in October to just be out in the elements for 8 months?
Yeah, absolutely. Oftentimes we will wait on, shade fabric until the following spring. Sometimes we actually will wait on the vertical features until the next spring. So we'll have the bases installed. We'll put the winter caps, which if you can imagine this with no holes in it, right, that's going to prevent the water from getting in there. So then in the spring, you can come and bolt on your vertical features and away you go. So yeah, we can definitely look at things like that.
And I saw the $600,000 to $700,000 shortfall that we have in this early budget. Is there cost savings to do all of this in 1 year? Or could we get the splash pad in by October and do the playground the following year? Is that inefficient? Is that going to cost us more in the long run?
Yes. Short answer is yes. Anytime you can have all the disturbance go at once, and with a project like this, we have so much of the same trade. So we have a lot of concrete work, we have a lot of earth work. You don't want to have two contractors coming back and forth and repeating some stuff that we just did. So I really think in this case, there's a lot of merit to doing it at the same time. I could safely say 15% increase to switch it or to separate it. Yeah. Is this an exciting thing? I mean, we're excited. I hope you guys are too, and I hope you guys are too. You know, I think it's again, a great way. I keep talking about telling a story. It's a great way to create a really vibrant space for the community, and we're excited to be along for the journey. So I do want to come back to my initial request to you tonight, and that's to try and figure out a theme or direction that we can take this. I know you mentioned you had heard some comments on that. Let's explore that a little further if we can. Does anyone else have any thoughts on a direction or?
No, I'm gonna piggyback on Sam's comment on the agriculture, which is at village board the other night. There were just comments on another asset in our community that celebrates the agricultural history of Wanakee. And, you know, if that's something that we're kind of not trademarking ourselves with, but that's what we're known for. Whether it's, you know, like corn stalks and sunflowers or whatever it might be, I think there could be some really fun elements to kind of play that up a little bit, but.
Okay, so let's build on that. What are those fun elements in your head when you think about, and that's not just for you, it's for all of you. What are beyond corn and windmills, you know, what are the other elements that in your minds speak to Wanakee?
I would say, you know, just tying in with the natural theme and, you know, old agricultural like bur oak trees, you know,
Mhm.
that old sort of craggy oak opening kind of tree look.
Okay, so a oak savanna.
Yeah,
kinda
yeah,
thing,
exactly.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at the logo right below you. You know, we've got the tufts of grass and the cattails. You know, those are things that we can pick up on. And that ties into that theme that we're talking about.
And maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think just looking at the region and things that people do outside, in addition to the agriculture part of it, like you said, you mentioned the cattails, like marshland and things that you'd see kind of as you just venture out outdoorsy.
Mhm.
Also, you could take a look at the design that we have for all of our park signs.
Mhm.
Might give you a thematic idea.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts? Do you want a concept B, a family B, or are we? in
I'd love to hear
consensus?
if anybody's responded to the online surveys with some out of the box ideas or some thoughts or anything like that from the community.
I think the only one on design direction was natural.
I think so too, but this might be a good point in the meeting to see what the neighbors that are here have
yeah,
to say,
great,
because they would see it more than any of us, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a microphone. Jeff,
Yeah.
do you have it?
Okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
Bill will give you the mic, and if you just state your name and address as you would for public comment, and then feel free to ask any questions or share any input you might have.
Okay, Jean Ryan, 600 Raymond Road. I like the natural theme, but I also really like the farming theme. That way you could make it look natural, but like some of the playscapes, you could have like a barn theme. So you're bringing some subtle color in, you're bringing in reds, you're bringing in earth tones, you know, of a barn that they're climbing in or whatever. Something like that.
What do you think about the Wanakee Bridge? Or the bridges that, yeah,
That's a great thought.
okay.
I don't like the purple idea at all, and we were actually commenting. The only thing worse than this going in is if it was purple. So if it was natural because of the location, it's packed in a really busy park. And you want one more, or do you want it just to look nice and blend in?
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
I'm Jeff Ryan, 600 Raymond Road. One of the concerns I think that I have is like lights on the north side that would be maybe coming up to the north, going to the north. That is one of my biggest concerns. So, I mean, lights up or down, whatever, that's good. Like with a picnic area, if that was to come across and you have all those lights beaming through, that might be a little bit too much. We already have the ball lights coming through. And then my second thing is not with the park at all, but with the 600 or the Raymond Road, the curve that we're on. Big concern where there's a crosswalk going across, and we're out there every night. We see people flying around both ways. And I think it's pretty dangerous right now for pedestrians to be crossing that, and we feel that it's gonna more traffic is gonna park in that area. And then just cut through, which they do like for Wanafest or Wana Booms and everything. So that's just another one of the concerns that have been talked about in our neighborhood.
Linda Mueller, 602 Raymond. I think purple is for the schools, which it's well represented. Natural theme, I think, is great. I have a question about the Four Seasons. Was it for restrooms? Well,
Yeah, so the restroom, that building is currently heated. So for winter use.
but it's closed in the winter.
Right, but I think the thought is if we can activate the skating rink and actually maintain it with a decent winter of ice, then that building is there and ready for, it's heated, so they could use that front area, the south area, as a warming room. I think that's the discussion that's been about the 12-month.
Because I know right now it's hard to maintain the ice. I see the workers out there always trying to do it. But there's no warming shelter. There's no place to sit down and well, they don't. I mean, currently, right? And for little kids to put their skates on there, it's not a good place.
Yeah, many years ago when that shelter was designed, that is why it has a furnace in it, is so it can be heated year round and could be a warming shelter for skating. You're right. We have not had a lot of good luck with ice in that park up until the last couple of years, and our crew has tried some new methods and had some pretty good success. So we are hoping that we can increase the ice skating in that park. Clearly that's a daytime event. I don't imagine at this time we would be lighting and skating at night. We would be just happy to be able to skate for 45 days maybe.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. We are definitely not looking at putting in night lighting for skating. To your comment about where the lighting goes, I think if there are lights along the pathway along that north side, and I think we would continue that for safety purposes. We might also look at some low level bollards and downlighting, to kind of frame out that space and make sure that there are no dark pockets anywhere. But I don't, certainly in my head, I didn't have any big bright lights planned on the north side at all. And anything that would be on the south side would probably be limited to the catenary, the string lights, only for special occasions that wouldn't be on, 7 days a week in the winter. I hear your comment, because I know right where you guys are at. So.
Yeah. And I guess the other question is, whichever structure in my mind is the largest, I think would be nicest to have it on the east side of that shelter, just because our yards are right there. So it's hard to tell from the, I think it's a moot point as far as parents playing baseball or softball and watching their kids and stuff, because if there's a water park, who knows, the kids are going to be running hither and yon. So I don't think it needs to be the closest to the ball diamonds for the parents' sake. But as residents that live right there, I'd like the smallest structure
So
on our end, because the other is parking lot.
Yeah, so of the two, the splash pad versus the playground, I think the playground is going to occupy a larger square footage footprint. So to that point, it may make some sense to maintain its current position on the east side of the shelter. And we have the splash pad sit kind of north, or not north, but kind of that northeast corner where the little swing set is now. The other thing to your advantage is that is really only activated for 12 weeks of the year. And so that, maybe, I know you guys have some concerns about the activity, so maybe that helps alleviate that some as well. I think it's a great suggestion.
Jim Miller, 602 Raymond Road. I like the natural idea a lot. You know, the Wanakee is known as Peaceful Valley. I know I'm older, so I'm not a kid wanting to get down there and tear around and stuff and have the, brighter stuff, but just, I don't know, I'm gonna have 2 grandkids that are gonna be in the age to play in that stuff, so, I'm not, it's gonna be okay to be down there. But I kind of like the idea of the bigger structure, maybe because it's a little bit lower there. So if you have taller structure and stuff, it's not gonna be quite so obvious.
Yep, that's also a very good point.
And then also I would like to second Jeff's thing on Raymond Road with that curve, it's just a safety thing for us. We don't want to see anybody get hurt crossing that road. And yeah, and there's just a lot of people coming and going there. And it's fine and stuff, but I know there'll be extra traffic and stuff, but that doesn't have anything to do with the design and stuff, so.
Well, I appreciate the comment. I think, staff has now heard it from you guys several times, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can, take a look and see what potential solutions are.
Jean Ryan again, one additional thing, it's really important. We actually love children and we love our community. We really have to make sure there's swings that adults can use as well. Because we have some people that swing there all the time and it's a big part of their life. I'm not sure, they must live real close. And so somewhere in the design, we have to accommodate them.
Great comment. Yeah, I appreciate it. Swings are a must,
Okay.
Especially in an inclusive playscape. I think you guys heard me say last time I was here, I have an adult sibling with disabilities and I hear it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
It's
So
just
yeah,
so soothing.
yeah, absolutely.
sometimes, so.
Yeah.
Maybe the new swings won't squeak though.
We're so used to the squeaky.
My name is Bill Rudman. I live on Holiday Drive. Is there any plan for some type of noise abatement to go in this thing? Cause there's a lot of noise that comes from that area where the place set is right now.
So one of the things that we are looking at, we talked about maintaining the existing trees. I think this is a great opportunity to add more trees. We also could look at some earth berming, creating those artificial landforms to help, channel some of the noise. I mean, it is a park, there's an existing playground there. I spent several hours there this afternoon and I watched, the crowd change and cycle through. It was really kind of fun to see, the different user groups come through and leave. So, I think, it was a snapshot in time. Of course, it's one day, but yeah, that stuff is typical and happens throughout the day. So yeah, we'll certainly look at strategies for that. We're not going to put up a sound wall. But,
Right.
Yeah, if we can find natural ways to soften the space, we will.
But I guess what I'm looking at too is I'm there 365. And, some people are just there for a day or two. And so it's going to be a constant for me. And I get a lot of noise from there as it is, especially during WannaFest. I mean, it's 4 days of no sleep, basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can solve that one for you, but.
Right, but I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it. It's
Concerned about, there's gonna be a lot more traffic because of people coming through there, and there's quite a bit of traffic now. There's a lot of kids that ride their bikes right down the middle of the road. I'm concerned about somebody getting hurt. But like I said, the other concern is the noise.
Yeah, so maybe you and I can look at an air photo and kind of identify maybe where you're at, and we can look at some strategic areas to try and mitigate some of that. We're not going to solve all the problem, but maybe with some, careful planning, we might be able to help.
Okay.
Thanks. Tiffany Loken, 5630 Woodland Drive. I'm also the Director of Special Education for the Wanakee School District. And I just wanted to share how thankful our families in the school district will be and excited will be about having an inclusive playground, and the splash pad I'm sure will be exciting, which will be accessible because it's generally flat. But I have parents tell me often, especially for students in wheelchairs, that they will drive into Madison, they'll drive to Sun Prairie, they'll drive to all different areas to find inclusive playgrounds. So it's just super exciting to have something right here. And it sounds like, although there might be some concerns, there's a lot of excitement too. So
But before you give that up, so I'm actually gonna ask for some favors from you. If you can maybe connect with Sue, and as we progress through this, if we can get some input, you know, maybe some of the families that you
we have
can
one
identify.
family here that's.
Yeah, excellent. Good, good. So really, I mean, we need some of that sort of boots on the ground input as we go through. And, you know, I talked about the child and the other community. Having that input was great for us. It sort of made us step back and open our eyes to a tiny little element that I may not have thought about. So any of that input is really helpful.
And I have one question I know online people have raised. Is this water recycled at all? Is it just,
Yeah, so there are two ways to do a splash pad. One is a recirculation system, which is under the classification of a pool, public pool. And the second is a flow through. So this system would operate as a flow through. So the water will come in, run through the features, and then go out to storm sewer. So one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, where are we directing that water? Is it going to an infiltration basin somewhere to try and recapture it for groundwater? So we're looking at ways to sort of globally recycle it or recirculate it. The problem with doing a traditional recirculation system is it then has to comply with all of the regulations of a public pool, which means you staff it, you chemically treat it, you fence it, you have various other, I mean, I can go into the laundry list of elements, but it did not make sense for this project to do that.
so like how many gallons a day when it's operating?
So we are limited to 50,000 gallons a day. Which sounds like a lot if you're not familiar with water usage, but even a recirculation system is going to be using at least half of that for backwash and bather loading or bather loss. So the delta or the difference between a recirc and a flow through is not 0 to 50,000. It is half that.
Like I'll hop in here. I had a conversation today with the folks out at Wanakee Utilities again, kind of talking about water use because I pay my water bill, but I don't even really look at it. Interesting fact, in June, in the village of Wanakee, the utilities pumped 70 million gallons of water. So I think to me that really, it puts that into perspective that 50,000 gallons a day is really not as much as it sounds. It sounds like a lot. But when you look at the big picture, Randy also told me on average, the village uses 1.1 to 1.4 million gallons a day throughout the year. So we did reach out to them early on and ask them if this feature would put pressure onto our water system. And they worked through their consulting firm and got back to us and said that this was not going to make a substantial difference in the water needs of the village. So we did some of that homework already.
Yeah, the other thing, I mean, I get asked questions like that quite a bit. And the other example I like to say is, if you ever seen a fire hydrant blowing water in a water main flush, that uses a substantial amount of water. I mean, that, you know, the size of that aperture is greatly vaster than what we're pushing through these tiny little holes. So there's a lot of water usage that we never even think about, that, you know, is there and we all pay for. So.
And I just wanted to introduce myself, Monica Herrera, and my kids go to the Wanakee School District, and they both are in wheelchairs. So I'm very excited to see this. And we've driven very far for accessible playground. So it's so exciting to have something in our community, and I'm happy to share feedback, but it looks great. Everything I saw looks really great. And personally, I'm also for the nature theme a lot.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or
Again, if we have
thoughts?
anybody online who'd be interested in participating, you can indicate the raised hand function and Jared is happy to bring you in. I would say in terms of the concerns with Raymond Road, I think it would be appropriate to have a crosswalk indicator sign there now, even without the splash pad. I don't think that we have one there currently. No. I'm getting the vibe that we want sort of a fusion between the nature and the agriculture, you know, kitsch, but not too much kitsch, for lack of a better descriptor, you know, not fire engine red barns, but we want, you know, I assume, I don't know if you've seen the barn that backs up to Village Park, sort of that kind of natural irony board sort of color. I guess, is there anything else that you're looking for from the committee that you need to, you know, proceed, or feedback that you'd like?
Well, I think there was some discussion about the location, you know, of the pad versus the play. And on this side of the room, but I think, you know, I'd like to sort of get buy-in, or you guys to tell me what your thoughts are on that, what makes the most sense. Because really our next step, as soon as we get that topo survey, is we're going to start laying out those footprints and seeing how the grades work. And it's really important for us to know, is it A or B?
I'll just weigh in on kind of the counter argument to the original thought of flipping them around. And I think you're right now you'll see the kids in the playground because that's what's there. But I know if it were my kids when I was little, if we were at the ball fields, they'd be at the splash park, especially if it was a hot day. So I'm not sure that will make a difference or not. So I think if it makes more sense to accommodate the neighborhood based on the configuration, I have no problem with that. Don't see have any concerns.
Anybody else have a thought on that?
Been quiet the whole time, so just thinking, I agree. I think if flipping it makes sense. You guys are the professionals, so I kind of wish we could meet again after you do the topography so we could make that type of a decision. But I mean, if it makes sense to do it, if it respects the, you know, the neighborhood to flip it around so that it helps with noise abatement and things like that, that's fine. As a parent of a 7-year-old, I know that if I was over at the softball field, she's going to go wherever she wants anyway. So I maybe it makes me a bad parent. I wouldn't be too concerned about which order it's in, if it's splash pad first or park second. She's going to go to both of them. So I don't put as much weight in that, but definitely put the weight in, you know, if it works with the topography and it helps with the neighbors' concerns. Yeah, I don't see any concern with flipping it around.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, we really need to explore that and see where the magic falls once we get into it. And, you know, we'll continue to work with staff and find the best solution and report back. So, yeah, no, I think it was a good discussion tonight. As Katie said, we covered a lot of content. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. So hopefully it wasn't too much to absorb, but I appreciate you doing the absorption and the quick feedback. So
Before I let you go, because I've got a couple more for you.
yeah, of course.
I spoke with Sue a couple of weeks ago because for the first time I realized that there are on and off buttons on splash pads. And I'm assuming that's going to also be the case here in Wanakee.
Absolutely.
So your 50,000 gallons is a maximum. This is not going to be necessarily running continually.
Absolutely not. So the way it works, yes, let's just pretend this is our sensor. It's an infrared sensor in a pipe bollard that's on the pad. And when a child or an adult goes out to the pad, they can just wave their hand across it, and that starts a sequence. Usually it's about 3 minutes. The cycle will run. The water comes through the toys and it goes away and the cycle stops. If no one is there, it doesn't run again until you come out and decide your backyard is boring and you want to wave it again, and that starts your 3 minutes again. So when we run our initial calculations, we have a very detailed system that looks at average temperatures throughout the 12 weeks of the summer. So we know how many days are between 70 and 79, and how many are between 80 and 89 and 90 and 100. And so we know that on those 70-degree days, you're going to run that pad at 15%. And on those 199-degree days, it's 100%. And so we can sort of figure out when we look at a whole season, what your total consumption is going to be based on those average days. Now it's a calculated guess on our part, but over time, it's been pretty close.
You suggested Middleton, Sun Prairie both have water parks that we might take a look at. I'm most interested in the scale. You must have, pardon me. You must have some idea of how big this thing is going to be.
Mhm.
I would like to get an idea of how big this might be. Would anything in the community, I mean, is it half the size of Sun Prairie, twice as big as, is there something I can look at in order to get that size perspective?
Yeah, so I think the Sun Prairie example is really good because the splash pad is going to be very, very similar in size. The playground will be, my suspicion is we're going to end up with a bigger footprint than Sun Prairie
For the playground?
for the playground. Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
great.
If you go out there and you just stand back and look at it all, that's going to be pretty close. And it has a shelter right there in the background. It has parking. It has homes around it. It's a terrific comparison.
Okay. And then the last thing, just a point to Sue, if before we sign off tonight, you could promote where that survey is available.
Can you guys keep talking and I'll pull it up on my computer screen and we can put it on the Zoom link as well as on the screen here. So I'll work on that.
I'm not very good at dancing. Otherwise, I would do a little shuffle, to stall time.
I'll-
Katie,
I'll-
what else do we need to cover?
I was gonna jump back in really quick.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, because about the colors, I'm also not a fan of making it purple, sorry to the Wanakee School District. But if you would want some examples of colors, if we're gonna go with the nature theme, even just going up to like Governor Nelson right now, which has a lot of like the fall flowers that are still, or I'm sorry, not fall flowers, still the summer flowers are still out there, and just pulling some of those colors, I think would be that more earth tony thing.
Yeah.
If you were looking to counterbalance to just the ag colors as well, so.
Okay.
I'm not very creative, so that took a lot for me to.
Oh, that was
one.
good. I mean, I wondered why you were so quiet all night, but now I get it. I want to make sure that we don't get too far into the kitschy. That's a great word for it. So we've got to find that balance of, hey, we're making a statement of the natural and the agrarian theme, but we're not going into the Culver barn.
I don't know if we need any cow statues or anything like that as part of it.
Oh, cows. I hadn't even thought about that. That's
One little thing, I like the blue rather than the purple, but there was some concern about lighting. And I'm assuming that any accent lighting you have will be cut off around 9 PM on an automatic basis along with the park, right? And if we have any kind of security lighting, that's going to be aimed in to where it doesn't escape the park, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything would be full cutoff fixture. I don't know how your pathway lights work now. Bill, do you know, are they on a photo cell and auto timer off, or how does that work?
The path lights are actually on public.
Follow the rules. Anyhow, the path lights and the parking lot lights, both run, I believe, till like 10:30, or 12:30, I guess, in the summer with ball fields, so. They go off in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so I don't think we'd be introducing a policy change on that. It would be consistent with whatever has been working.
Since it looks like Sue wants some more time. I'm sorry, what ages are served by a water park when you think about this? I mean, as we did think about what we're putting in here for a water park, what's the age range?
Yeah, so I can tell you from my personal experience, I think I have twins who are 11 now, and I took them to their first splash pad. It was Milton. What year was that?
We have photos of them as toddlers.
Yeah, so
Although,
18
before they can
months, 18 months, and they're 11 and they still love going to splash pads. They were in Sun Prairies last week.
Yeah.
During one of our construction meetings, actually. It was a great babysitter. I'm a bad parent too, so. So I can tell you from my personal experience, that's a pretty big range. And, you know, I would assume that next summer they'll still be interested. So if you think 0 to 12, you know, that's pretty typical when you think about play equipment. We separate play equipment from 0 to 5 and then 5 to 12 in terms of level of difficulty and challenge and the danger factor I talked about earlier. Splash pads are the same way.
All right, I'm Jessie Chip. I live at 520 Raymond Road. And so we've lived here just a year, but I actually lived in Sun Prairie about a block away from Wetmore Park. And so having that experience, my son is 15, so we didn't really go there with him, but we have lots of younger nieces and nephews, and we loved it. I thought the flow from the playground into the splash pad, I thought the butterfly features were just super cool. I think the outdoor changing rooms were nice. And I think if it ends up being where the splash pad comes up closer to our house, having those as maybe a little bit of a barrier just for sound and visual. And they don't look like they're like outhouses or,
Right.
you know, changing rooms. They like the structure was really nice. And the flooring, the circular flooring you sent around, is that what's there? That squishy?
Yes, correct. Yep, exactly the same.
And I think kids didn't get hurt on that. I think when you guys were asking about Sun Prairie, if you can go there, it's a really nice flow. The rocks made a lot of extra seating around, so. Yeah,
Thank you.
It was nice.
The bad news is the water got turned off today at Sun Prairie. So you won't get to see it in action, but actually we have video on our website if you really wanted to see it in action. But yeah, that is a great one to check out as a great comparable.
So Fitchburg has a very heavily agricultural themed splash pad. If you would like to see one that is, you know, follows that theme to kind of the extent, yes, past kitschy. I know that one runs through Friday. I think it's probably one of the last ones up and running in the area for this year. And they also do have changing stalls. They have a separate changing room building that they built that has several changing stalls, and they're a very different appearance than the ones that are over at the Wetmore Park.
So when we did that pad, the bathroom structure and the mechanical enclosure is a barn. It's a full-fledged barn and it's massive. So that, you know, as Katie said, is kind of it was over the top, but it was very appropriate for that setting. It is not, I think, in my opinion, appropriate for Centennial, but it's perfect there.
I was at the Verona
Mhm.
Park this last weekend, and it was very hot. But they have that, I don't know if you guys did that park, the water park at
We did not do
Verona.
that one.
Okay, but it has the really low pile, green, like AstroTurf in the play area.
Mhm.
And that was really hot. I mean, so are there certain colors that are not as hot? Because I see kids, they were going from the splash pad to the play area and they're like, oh, hot lava, like they couldn't go without sandals.
So there are certain areas that we prefer to put turf and certain areas that we don't. I know exactly what you're talking about with that particular spot. So yes, there are strategies to avoid that. That's a great park. But yeah, yeah. Sue, did you find was that a good enough stall?
It was great. I did find it. I'm not sure if posting it on the screen will work. Do you think it will, Jared? The QR code? Okay. So it is posted on the Zoom meeting right now. But the other thing that we will do is on our social media account, both the Village Center and the Village of Wanakee tomorrow, when Jared has the recording of this meeting ready to go, we will make a social media post that links to the taping of this meeting and also includes that survey. So we'll get it out that way as well. So people that are interested can share. My favorite story about the Sun Prairie playground is I took my granddaughters there and we were on the top of the playground and I said, you know, Mia, Grandma's friend designed this playground. And she looked at me and said, Grandma, your friend is talented. So you got big stars there.
Excellent. Well, this was a lot of discussion, so thank you guys tonight. I think I feel pretty good about our direction. I think next time we come to see you, we'll have a lot of fun stuff to share and hopefully continue the excitement and, you know, appreciate you guys being here and not bringing me cookies tonight. I do appreciate that. It's an inside joke. But no, it's great. So thank you. Hopefully we can continue to build together and see it through.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'd look for our final motion of the evening.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?